Can Team Gingrich survive a $12 million carpet bombing from Team Romney? It's Monday, January 30th, and this is Now. Joining me today, the always dapper Ari Melber from The Nation. Victoria DeFrancesco Soto is Communications Director at Latino Decisions. The game changer and toast of the home box office network, MSNBC's Mark Halperin. And Jimmy, son of the South, Williams. One day before the Florida primary, a new Quinnipiac poll confirms what a handful of surveys found this weekend. It is all sunshine for Mitt Romney. In every poll out since Saturday, Mitt Romney leads from between 11 and 15 points. I ask you, my panel, joining us now is Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. We will bring you in a second, Congresswoman. Thank you for joining us from Florida.
Thank you.
I first want to bring in our panel and discuss those Romney numbers a little bit. Is this evidence of a changed candidate or a campaign that knows exactly what it's doing?
Jimmy?
Wow, absolute crickets on set.
Yeah, I think the most telling thing is Gingrich has done some imploding, and Romney has the slow turtle always wins, right? But the most telling number is the Rick Santorum number. The Rick Santorum number is, 10 to 14 points.
The one number that's actually not on this.
That's correct. But what's interesting, so take Rick Santorum out of the race. Add 14 points to Gingrich's number, because those people are not going to vote for Romney. It's neck and neck. Rick Santorum is helping Newt Gingrich lose this race.
See, here's what jumps out at me. It's like if you've ever met someone just on Facebook and you're like, oh, she looks really great. I want to get to know her. She's beautiful. She's got all these interesting hobbies. And then you meet them in person and you don't like them as much for whatever range of reasons. They seem different. That's what's going on with Gingrich. He also led in Florida all of December up until the New Hampshire primary. So there was an enthusiasm of some kind there for him. And now I think they're actually getting to know him. He's in the state, he's campaigning, he's dealing with negative ads, and he's hurting.
But Florida, even though it's geographically in the South, is not a southern state like South Carolina. So we thought he's coming out of South Carolina, he'll do well here. No, you've got a ton of older folks there, senior citizens, Latinos, and Jewish vote. It makes for a whole different ballgame. We're going to see more of Newt Gingrich coming back up as we get into the southern states.
I want to bring in Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen. Thank you again for joining us, Congresswoman.
Thank you.
And I want to talk a little bit about Florida, because we look at what Romney is doing among women, men, Christians, and Tea Partiers. Among women, he's 21 points up. Among men, 9 points, Christians 6%. These are groups that he had a lot of trouble with in South Carolina, and yet he seems to have them on lock down in your fair state of Florida.
I think that he's had a very a good message, a positive message. He's been more aggressive in contrasting his agenda about the economy with those of his the other opponents, and I like them all. I don't speak badly about any of the Republicans, but he's been more aggressive after the shellacking that he got in South Carolina. It was like a splash of cold water. He came in charging, and he didn't let up. He's still hard pounding his opponents, and what really concerns us here in Florida is the unemployment. Our South Florida unemployment numbers way up, more than the national average. And I know the Latino vote has gotten a lot of attention, and people say, well, Romney is an anti-immigrant. That's been kind of like a tone. And I think that boomeranged on people who tried to use that. We care about jobs. We care about education. We care about everything every community cares about. And Romney's got the right message.
Mark Halperin, I want to bring you in here. Is this the moment that the chattering class has been waiting for, that where Romney finally takes off? Florida is, in many ways, a lot of folks say, sort of a model for a national campaign. He's doing well with sections of the electorate he previously had problems with. Is this the beginning of him being the real nominee, that support finally coalesces around him and it's over?
I think it depends on how it plays out starting tomorrow or Wednesday morning. The reality is, we had Romney benefiting greatly for a lot of reasons since South Carolina. I think the biggest one, literally, is Gingrich imploding. The second biggest is that the establishment had its uh-oh moment when Gingrich won South Carolina, because they said, uh-oh, if we don't focus now and stop him in Florida, this could be a real problem. Now the far right's going to have its uh-oh moment, because they don't want Mitt Romney as their nominee. People are still talking about Rick Santorum. They're still talking about another candidate getting in the race. They're still talking about Gingrich's flaws. There's going to be an uh-oh moment, because starting Wednesday morning, Tuesday night, there's going to be a lot of people saying that's it. It's inexorable. Romney will win either by the end of February or the middle of March. And I think Gingrich, if he performs better than he has in Florida going forward, he can head off this notion that Romney is inevitable.
Well, and the sort of reports are that Newt is not going anywhere, and is looking towards the southern primaries. Let's look at the calendar. I mean, he has southern states, including, let's see, Nevada. He has Arizona coming out, which could be a little bit more favorable. Southern states, including Georgia, will be obviously in his backyard. Missouri. Further on, March is a much better month for Newt Gingrich than February, which is a slow month, as it were. But can he keep? When you talk about the uh-oh moments, is an uh-oh on the part of the sort of far right going to be as loudly heard as the uh-oh on the part of the establishment, Republican base? Which is to say, can they actually maneuver their troops in the efficient way that Mitt Romney has in the last week?
Alex, one important maneuver that took place in Florida was the endorsements. Money can't buy you love, but endorsements, trusting those people who you've been voting for day in and day out, are crucial, and he has done that in Florida. And Romney, for the past couple of years, since he left the race in 2008, has been collecting those endorsements. And that's what's going to help propel him, even more so than the money, and that's what we saw in Florida.
I disagree. I see it a little differently. I think that more important than endorsement is the anti-endorsement. Bob Dole came out for Romney. I don't think people cared that much. I don't think Republicans cared that much. Bob Dole came out a second time and said, by the way, Newt Gingrich has crazy ideas, was difficult to work with. Do not nominate this man. That mattered. And I think coming in with a hard negative, if you have credibility in the Republican Party, matters a lot more than what Nikki Haley or others did, which is say, oh, I like someone. Okay, well, people aren't moving that way this cycle.
But it depends on who that endorsement comes from. A catch-all, I approve of Romney. But an endorsement from Ileana Ros-Lehtinen to the Cuban-American population, that's a big deal. So it depends on who it comes from to what population.
He's doing well.
Congresswoman, I want to talk to you a little bit about the surrogate question, because we know that the Romney camp has been incredibly organized, sending out surrogates to Gingrich events to rebut what they see as falsehoods being, sort of spoken and furthered in the conversation by Gingrich. I wonder, if we talk about effective campaign organization, what is it like there on the ground for you in terms of the Romney team? There was an article this weekend in the New York Times discussing how Romney's campaign was instrumental in kind of getting him back up in the polls, and that perhaps the candidate didn't have as much of a role to play in all of that. What did you make of all of that?
Well, I disagree. I think that the organization has always been there. The endorsements have been there. It's the candidate who's come out stronger. I think if we had a do-over in South Carolina, you would see the same organization, but a different Mitt Romney showing up for debates. And that's what we saw decisively in Florida. The two debates were knockouts by Mitt Romney because he was energized. He knew everything is at stake here in Florida. We know that the candidates are going to go on for many more races, but you're going to see what we've seen here, a new Mitt Romney who's charged up, who's aggressively courting the vote. And we've had these tests with evangelical voters before. In Iowa, they said it's going to be bad for Mitt Romney, but he did very well. Technically did not win, but came very close. So he's been proving it in moderate places and conservative places, and he was just not on his A game in South Carolina. If we had a do-over, the organization didn't need to change. The message didn't need to change. It was the delivery of that impassioned message that we want to beat Obama, that he is the candidate who can beat Obama, and that he's got a strong economic message for our times. And I think that's what's going to make a difference in all of those states, including the Southern strategy.
It's worth mentioning that Mitt Romney himself pushed back on this sort of notion that he didn't have a role to play in the campaign pivot. I want to play a little bit of sound from him this morning on the Today Show.
I think you can expect advisors to think that the work of advisors is very, very important. But frankly, I think if you were to go back and look at where the sentiment changed, it was with the debates.
Which is sort of a word to the wise. They did not just plug me into a wall. I actually have some say in this. It was my work at the debates. Mark, when we look at the general, if Mitt Romney is in fact the nominee, can we expect that kind of sort of very sharply tongued Mitt Romney to be on stage when he's going at President Obama?
Look, we're all evaluating Mitt Romney now as the likely nominee and looking at how he's done in Florida as kind of at least tea leaves to say what would he be like in the general. There's some very good things. Strong in the debate when the game was on the line. very strong on the stump, reinforcing the paid media with his earned media. But remember, during the same period, he's had the tax returns, all the little dimensions of that, the effective rate he pays, the Cayman Islands. He's not been all that consistent. So I think he's right. He's done this, and you have to have the candidate driving the message. You see that on the other side, where Gingrich has been a complete disaster since South Carolina, but he's not been a flawless candidate by any means.
One can bet that the phrase Cayman Islands and Swiss bank accounts will be in the air as we go march inexorably towards November 2012. Thanks again.